But with that, yeah. So first up, I want to acknowledge that we have a pretty diverse audience on this call. So we have folks that are very familiar with the national service space, like current programs, state service commissions, but we also have other government agencies, employers, various network associations. So I will spend a few minutes off the bat, really putting everybody at a level playing field to define kind of the work of our organization, what national service is all about and the makeup there, and then a high-level overview of this climate project that produced the deliverables that we'll be talking through. We'll then go in through a few remarks for some partners that we're working with, where they're going to share their story and kind of tie everything that I set up front to kind of real-world experiences of service and how that has played into current career paths and even current bodies of work. Then the bulk of our kind of session together will be for me to actually work through some of these new resources that are free and available that hopefully will be helpful tools for you all to leverage in a variety of different ways. We'll spend about 25 minutes there. And then probably the best part of today's presentation is we'll actually break out into 3 different breakout groups. You'll be able to self-select which breakout group you join based on your interest. And you'll be able to actually hear from some practitioners in the real world about how you can use these resources and how that kind of equates to their program models. Finally, we'll just kind of wrap things up with next steps, group Q&A, just making sure everybody is comfortable with kind of how they can take the information learned during this webinar and use it in their daily lives. So with that, our organization, Service Year Alliance, our mission is to ensure that a service year or a paid service year is a common opportunity and expectation for all young Americans. So in the next few slides, I'll definitely define what we mean by service year. But really, if you think about this mission statement, what we're all about is supporting the broad field, the broad network of AmeriCorps, youth-build programs, VISTA programs across the country that are doing really great things on a daily basis. To help guide our work, we really operate in 3 different pillars. The first one is our expansion work. What this is really all about is partnership developed to make sure that these programs across the country have what they need to continue to grow and enhance their programming. So everything from developing public policy champions to workforce development, bringing philanthropy into the space, anything that can benefit the network is where we want to be. Our next pillar is recruitment. This is probably one of the areas that we're most known for. We operate serviceyear.org, which is a common recruitment platform for service year programs, where we help drive traffic of potential applicants to those programs, very much also in the market or the recruitment market research space as well. We do like national polls, focus groups with young people to learn about what motivations they have, what is speaking to them about service opportunities, what challenges might be out there, and then get that learning out to the field. Finally, we have our impact work, which again, this is all about bringing stakeholders together. We fund some or support some place-based initiatives with our impact communities, which is really about community, states, programs working together to make a quality service experience for their core members. But we also take on specific project initiatives like the one I'll be talking about in the next few slides with our climate project. Okay, so yeah, let's talk a little bit about what we mean by a service year. So we define service year as a paid opportunity to develop real-world skills through hands-on service that seeks to address some of our nation's greatest challenges. So an easy tagline for that to digest it is a better you, because there's benefits for the young people who serve in these programs, and a greater us. So they're, as part of their service, they're also making impact to the community or maybe the nation at large. It fluctuates on a yearly basis, but they're generally between 65,000 and 85,000 service opportunities across the country. And these look very different. It could be everything from different lengths of commitment, anything from like a full year of service to a few months of service, different focus areas, everything from education, financial stability, environmental stewardship, and then also geographic regions across the country. So again, to tie this all together, we think of these as a triple bottom line win. Program participants win from gaining job skills, payments, benefits. The community at large wins because they're addressing a specific need. And then the nation can win by increased civic engagement, building a next generation workforce, climate impact, all kinds of great stuff. So To paint a little bit of a picture of what that service year ecosystem generally looks like, is first of all, we have AmeriCorps, which is a federal agency. It funds the largest number of what we consider service year programs. They have 3 different core branches underneath the AmeriCorps branding, which we'll all kind of talk through in our next slide. One thing I want to express to folks on the call that may not be familiar with AmeriCorps is oftentimes it works through a grant-making process. So organizations that you might be familiar with like Teach for America, City Year, some Habitat for Humanity, some Boys and Girls Clubs, oftentimes are AmeriCorps grantees where they are leveraging AmeriCorps members to help them advance whatever their goals might be. We also have AmeriCorps Senior, which is still obviously part of the AmeriCorps agency, 3 branches underneath them as well. Consider this part of the ecosystem, but again, we lean into kind of the youth serving space. Department of Labor has Youth Build, which trains young people in a variety of different trades. Beyond these federal programs, we also consider some independent programs to meet our definition of service year. So thinking about things like maybe faith-based programs that again pay a stipend, addressing community needs while gaining skills. Finally, also a federal program, but we would also include Peace Corps as part of this broader ecosystem, very familiar to what or similar to what I already described, except serving at an international kind of basis. Okay, so let's take a few minutes to lean into the AmeriCorps space, since again, that's the largest kind of service year funder, and then also will be very applicable to a lot of what we'll be discussing today. And we'll also be circling back on a few of these definitions for each program where I kind of describe how the resources can be used. But the first branch of AmeriCorps is AmeriCorps State and National. We really kind of think of this as the direct service branch of national service. These are core members that might be serving in a variety of different term lengths, again, a few months up to a year, doing direct service. So things like directly interacting with clients, directly being out in the field, building new trails for communities, things like that. And this works through a grant-making process to organizations such as I described, pretty much nonprofits, faith-based, local government, institutions of higher education, tribal communities, things like that. Our next branch, VISTA, we really consider this kind of our capacity building or indirect arm. And what I mean by that is these core members oftentimes will serve more behind the scenes, doing capacity building activities like potentially writing grant applications, standing up new programming, community building, things like that. Generally, these core members serve in a full-time term, which is, again, like around 40 hours, maybe for a 10 or 11-month term. Finally, we have AmeriCorps NCCC. We think of this as our episodic branch of AmeriCorps. This is where teams of core members made of usually about 6 to 12 core members get trained at these 4 central locations around the country. And then they'll serve with a sponsor site for anywhere from like 2 weeks to 12 weeks on projects that, again, are episodic and maybe not last the whole year. Generally, like these can be all over the place as far as focus areas. They really kind of lean into environmental conservation, disaster response, but again, it can be very broad on what they focus on. But again, we're going to be kind of circling back to some of these different branches and how they tie in a little bit later to the webinar. So again, I would just want everybody to have a surface level understanding. All right, so let's talk about specifically Service Year Alliance Climate Project. So we entered into a multi-year partnership with the Cisco Foundation, where with also like organizations like the Core Network serving as close advisors on the project, to really start to examine how service year programming can be better leveraged to address climate change, while also equipping participants to be equipped with the skills to move into the broad kind of green sector emerging economy as well. As part of this project, we also did some of that market research to learn what is motivating young people to kind of enter into these service opportunities, but also these career paths. So a little bit about what the project looked like is, first of all, we had a series of conversations with national service stakeholders. This included both programs and commissions. We really went as broad as possible with our definition of what entails climate programming, and also did our best to like interview programs from around the country, team-based models, single member placement models, all kinds of different focus areas to really learn about what was happening, what best practices exist in the climate programming space, but also what challenges might there be to consider. In tandem with that, we also had interviews with green sector employer associations, workforce development partners, conservation organizations that maybe aren't engaging national service programming, to better learn about where those opportunities, what their needs are, what their challenges are, to start thinking about how we can tie those entities together for common and mutual benefit. In total, we had I don't even know at this point, well over 70 conversations or interviews as part of the process. So at a very high level, I want to talk about some initial alignment that we found as a part of conducting these interviews. So I think as most people on this call are familiar with, is these new mega bills that were passed with the infrastructure law and then also IRA have created increased need for both enhancing and expanding climate programming, but also a robust need to build a diverse and talent pipeline in order to meet those needs, right? And so there was a lot of alignment between the two kind of sectors there. So first of all, we found that within the environmental stewardship category, we generally see that there's about 40% participation by individuals identifying as female, and then about 50% of those participating in environmental service year programs identify as a minority population. So these are a great opportunity to continue to build a talent pipeline into these broad green sector jobs, which as a generality seem to be heavily weighted towards male and white. Some other alignments that came out of this discussion is, in order to give access to a diverse pipeline, you need to give them the opportunity to learn those skills. And oftentimes that comes with the need for receiving some kind of pay or stipend, benefits, and things like that. So with service year model, it's a great opportunity to advance kind of a learn and earn model to equip people for these type of opportunities. So at least with AmeriCorps programming, Corps members cannot supplement staff, but they can be totally used to increase capacity or enhance or expand services that are occurring at your organization. So for example, if bringing on Corps members can help you serve more families or enhance the programming that you're already providing, that's the perfect fit. You also see that, host sites, which can look a lot of different ways that we'll be talking about here a little bit later in the webinar, they oftentimes contribute a cost share for hosting AmeriCorps members or service year participants, but it's far less from what you would typically pay for bringing on a full-time employee. And what this creates is an opportunity for both the employer and the Corps member to kind of go through what I kind of describe as the extended interview process, which benefits both parties because it gives the young people to experience kind of a career pathway, whether or not that's right for them, an employer to make sure that they're the right fit for meeting the needs of kind of their organization. Some other things that came up that are worth noting is that, throughout their Corps member service experience, Corps members generally gain and demonstrate employability skills that we kept on hearing over and over again from employers that are of benefit from them, like things like demonstrating that they are able to communicate well as a team and with others. In some instances, being able to function in adverse weather conditions or, work in an outside environment. So all of those things are things that, again, can build into a quality talent pipeline depending on the specific needs of your organization or agency or whatever, or your company. There is significant opportunity to integrate industry recognized training and credentials into service year programming. So a lot of programs are already integrating some really applicable trainings to multiple career paths in the kind of climate space. But I think especially with the new funding coming down, it seems like there's an increased opportunity for partnership with service year programs to build in those credentials that you all might be looking for as employers. Something else that kind of resonated with me is that most Corps members that enter into these kind of environmental stewardship kind of service opportunities, they're very mission driven about making an impact towards climate resilience, right? And we heard from employers that those are the same type of employees that typically stick around for multiple years, for entire career terms. So there's already that kind of buy-in on the greater mission of the organization of many of the things that you're advancing on a day-to-day basis. So based on kind of some of these and other findings that came out of the project, we identified 3 diverse program models to really lean into as part of our phase 2 work of the project. And that's energy efficiency, community capacity building, and rural resilience. So before I just give you a definition of what we kind of mean by those and describe those programs, I would first like to hand it off to some of our special guests today to talk a little bit about, again, their service experience and how it's kind of continued to be used as part of their day-to-day lives even now. So with that, I would like to first invite Allison to make a few remarks.
Hi, everybody. My name is Allison Moe, and I work at the National Renewable Energy Laboratory, or NREL. You can see it in my name there. We're located in Colorado, so NREL is one of 17 national labs across the country that are funded primarily by the U.S. Department of Energy, and most of the people who work at NREL are brilliant scientists, and I am not one of those. But my work instead focuses on sort of bridging the gap between technology development and actually getting it adopted in the world. And more specifically, I do work around workforce development and community engagement, mostly around energy efficiency in buildings, and including the weatherization assistance program, which I am happy to talk about, but probably don't have the time to, but you can ask me about it. I was connected with Brent last year, actually through a project that I supported that worked with the Core Network. And I put together a report for them that talked about information on training and education resources for core programs that relate to building efficiency. But more broadly, I have sort of like a personal interest in this type of work. I'm an AmeriCorps alumni, so I did 2 terms of AmeriCorps with Habitat for Humanity. I had studied architecture in college and was interested in affordable housing, and saw AmeriCorps as a way to learn a sort of a different aspect of my architectural education and support an important community need. And so I did a year thinking I would do a year and then move on with my life, but it turns out I really liked building better than designing. And so I stayed on Habitat's construction staff for a total of 7 years, including my 2 terms of service. I went to grad school for city planning, community development. I worked as a planner for a bit, but missed the nonprofit world and came back and worked for a nonprofit called Grid Alternatives, doing solar workforce and education programming, where I again worked with AmeriCorps members. And so now I'm at NREL, and I just see so much alignment and potential for core programs to support the energy efficiency sector in the ways that Brent was describing earlier. You know, there's just so much funding coming in and there's workforce needs everywhere, but definitely in this sector, and especially the work that I do with the weatherization assistance program, there's definitely alignment there. So I see national service, you know, for me, it was a pathway. I like to say this, my parents are English teachers, so I never would have known that I was good at construction or liked it or was interested in that industry had I not had the opportunity to sort of try it out through AmeriCorps. And so it's been, I mean, I still volunteer with Habitat. I still have a whole lot of connections there, even if I don't work there directly. And so I just see it as a great pathway for exposing sort of the you know, more diversity that Brent was talking about and all of that way. So anyway, I'm happy to be here today. I'm happy to be supporting organizations like the Core Network and Service Year Alliance in any way I can. And I'll maybe talk to you all later in breakout groups.
Thanks so much, Allison. Yeah, I think it's perfect about that career exploration piece has been really vital about me serving as an AmeriCorps member as well. So thank you so much for mentioning that. And thank you for all the work that you do. Next up, I would like to pass it on to Melissa Sullivan.
Hi, everyone. My name is Melissa Sullivan. I am a spokesperson at the Environmental Protection Agency. I've been there for about 4 years. I came fresh off of my 2nd term of AmeriCorps service. I did 2 consecutive AmeriCorps terms in my hometown of Miami, Florida. My 1st term, I was working with Meals on Wheels South Florida, helping low-income, elderly, disabled residents recover from 2 back-to-back massive hurricanes. And then my 2nd term of service, I worked with the Department of Veterans Affairs to assist veteran caregivers, and it was very rewarding work. And after that, I used my AmeriCorps NCE, my non-competitive eligibility, to get the position that I've had for the last 4 years, as I mentioned, at the EPA. So I definitely suggest that if you have that NCE, to use it. There are a lot of benefits coming into federal service using your NCE. You get to bypass the nightmare that is USA Jobs, and in some cases can be hired directly. And I also encourage you to check out our page. It is careers.epa.gov. We're in the middle of a massive hiring surge. We have a lot of positions related to IRA and BIL, as Brent mentioned, and we also have a renewed focus on environmental justice. I believe my colleague, Robin Morris-Collin, is on the line. She is the senior advisor to the administrator for environmental justice. And we have a plethora of positions. We don't look at environmental justice as a separate issue. We really try to integrate it in everything that we do at EPA. The mission of EPA, for those who aren't familiar, is to protect human health and the environment. And we do that in a variety of ways. We regulate the air that we breathe, the water that we drink, the chemicals that we're exposed to. And there are a number of ways for you to get involved at EPA. You don't necessarily need to have an environmental background or even a scientific background, although a number of people do have that, as well as a public health background as well. But I'm a great example of joining EPA in a way where you don't need to have that scientific background. And so there are plenty of ways to work with EPA. And for those who might be Peace Corps, return Peace Corps volunteers as well, I know there's a number of people who do both. They can't get enough national service. So AmeriCorps and Peace Corps alum, we have a robust network of return Peace Corps volunteers, also former AmeriCorps members like myself, and we really do believe in national service at EPA. So if that's something that you're interested in, please reach out to me or check out our careers page, as I mentioned.
Well, Melissa, thanks so much for sharing your story, and you definitely have some right folks on this webinar to send some members your way. So we're hoping that, yeah, more and more members in government using that non-competitive status for VISTA. Fantastic. Well, thank you all. So yeah, what I'm going to be moving into is a little bit more about defining what those 3 areas that we leaned into for the project. And so, but before doing that, I just wanted to kind of briefly talk about how we landed at those kind of focus areas. First of all, we wanted to provide new information to the field at large. We know that some of our partners, like the Core Network, has been providing great resources for 20+ years, specifically or commonly in the crew-based conservation model world. And so hopefully these 3 models that we elevated will provide some additional great resources on top of what they have been producing for a while. We also very much looked into where the increased opportunity for expansion lies with these mega bills that have been passed. We also looked at, there were some opportunities there's limited existing programming in areas such as rural resilience, and we think both current funding and emerging funding from these bills can be leveraged to help stand up programming in the space, and there's also a need in those communities for the type of services that they can provide. We also looked at models like our community capacity building. One reason we chose that is to, oftentimes we see that as a starting place for communities or states that want to expand or stand up new kind of climate programming. So one reason we highlighted, say, that model. And then finally, across all 3 of these models, we wanted to make sure that they could paint a picture of a post-service pathway for Corps members. So after defining those focus areas, we then pulled together a group of 8 standout service year programs. I wish I could talk about all of them because they're all fantastic. But really what it allowed us to do, I think, over an 8-month period is really work really closely with these programs to take a deep dive into these different focus areas, to learn about all the different varieties they can be run, all the different benefits for stakeholders, challenges, everything you might need to know in order to make an impact in a few different ways that I'll be talking about. Those 8 programs were also divided into specific working groups based on these 3 focus areas, with some actually branching multiple working groups. And that was one of the reasons we specifically selected some programs. One moment. All right. So just to give you some definition for these 3 different focus areas, and I will highlight where you can read the full definition of these program models as well. But with energy efficiency, we took a broad look at this program model, and it typically entails Corps members participating in energy reduction activities, either at residential or public buildings. The service activities could be both direct, so like Corps members installing installation in an attic, Or they can be more capacity building in nature. So working with partners in order to convene partners on common goals, communication, things like that. One thing that we specifically liked about this model is there's a lot of different impacts that can result from it. Everything from workforce development for the core members to savings for homeowners, reduced energy strain on utility companies, climate impact. So we found that this model really communicates across a broad audience base. For community capacity building, what this typically looks like is a smaller contingency of members, maybe 1 or 2 core members, serving with entities like municipalities, nonprofit, institutions of higher education, school districts, tribal nations, faith-based communities, others, local government, to advance a wide variety of climate and environmental resilience related needs. So that's one of the cool things about this model is it can be used to address everything from looking at local ordinances that maybe need to be addressed to help advance climate initiatives, to helping communities stand up a community garden, to a lot of times, like say municipalities are really looking for opportunities to engage the community members in climate action, and core members can actually like lead and market those type of efforts. Rural resilience, we also took a broad list of look at this, and it could be advanced through both a single member placement model, like I was just talking about, or also a team-based model. So you might have a crew of core members building trail in a rural community to help increase sustainable tourism, things like that. Again, similar to community capacity building, it can be used to address a wide variety of needs, but oftentimes those needs are different than what we would see in an urban session. So it's a really great way to highlight those specific needs that can be helped advance by core members. The other great thing about this model is there's typically a strong focus on developing young leaders from local communities so they can be that next generation of stewards. And it also kind of serves as like a networking arm to bring experts, other organizations into kind of a information sharing network as part of being maybe part of a larger program. Okay, so let's move on to me kind of starting to work through highlighting some of the resources that were produced as part of the project. So first of all, these have multiple purposes. They are to help stakeholders leverage. And what I mean by leverage is really partnership development. So how you might be able to partner with an existing core for either your talent development needs or to meet goals of your organization without maybe necessarily hosting an AmeriCorps program yourself. They're also meant to help you develop, so stand up new programming, enhance, so things like maybe your current energy efficiency program, but you could use these documents to really take a deep dive into all the different partners that could potentially be in the space, all the different service activities, to really think about maybe how your organization can grow. And then finally, expand. So thinking about conservation corps are typically equipped to maybe even move into that energy efficiency space. And this could help your core think about how you might be able to do that, leverage funding to help support you, all that kind of stuff. So really the audience with these are, again, organizations that might be brand new to service year ecosystem, national service, that want to learn about all the different ways they might be able to partner with the environment or also stand up their own program if that's something that would make sense. It's very much made for state service commissions that might be looking to expand climate and environmental resilience programming in their state. And then again, current programs that are seeking to expand or enhance their programming. So where to start? Allie, I think, is going to be placing in the chat the direct link to this free document that's on our website, but we'll also send it up as a follow-up after this webinar. But first of all, you'll find that our climate and environmental resilience guide, and this is really going to help guide you through where you want to lean into. The first thing you'll kind of find as part of this guide is a description of you're brand new to service. I understand that this is confusing. So it'll give you more definitions of all those different service types that we talked about at the beginning of the webinar. And then also help you navigate, well, maybe I want to apply for funding. How do I do that? Who do I contact? All that kind of stuff. Also other resources that are even outside of our organization to help stand up new programming. We then have the program model summaries and highlights. This is where you can really get a much better scope of what I mean by those 3 focus areas. In addition to giving you a full kind of summary and overview, it also highlights usually a diverse array of programs that are operating in the state or in that focus area currently to help paint that picture of all the different ways it can look. Then you'll find links to each individual, what we call roadmaps. So those are what is associated with our focus areas. And I'll kind of show you where you can link to that here in a second. Finally, as part of this core guide, we also decided to elevate some fundamental components that was elevated as part of our cohort that I mentioned earlier, that were really essential to not being an afterthought in standing up a new programming or enhancing your program, but really needed to be at the forefront. And those are things like core member recruitment, centering your program design around a culture of belonging and inclusion, and then also strategies for how to prioritize post-service pathways. And then finally, we also included an addendum to just paint a picture of statewide climate initiatives that are happening in the service year space, if there's states on the call that would like to learn more about that. So again, this is just kind of what the summary looks like. And at the bottom of the summary of each roadmap is where you'll find a link that will link you into that specific roadmap document. I'll be doing a high-level overview of what that entails, but then that's when in the breakout groups we'll be taking a deep dive. I also wanted to call attention to, although these documents speak to the service year ecosystem, I think there's many sections that are applicable across multiple industries. So for example, belonging and inclusion, we're really finding that a lot of national service programs are doing a great job of supporting their young, diverse core members. And a lot of employers are interested in learning about how they do that so they can have supportive and compassionate leadership at their organization as well. So I think a lot of the things that are highlighted in things like this post-service pathways or centering program design section, or even in the recruitment section where it highlights a lot of that market research that we did about what's motivating young people, what messages are effective, are very much applicable to national service, but also applicable to, I think, most stakeholders on this call. So that's just kind of what I'm saying in the next slide too, is, in our post-service pathways, it highlights a lot of the current certifications that we see commonly inserted into climate and environmental resilience programming. To give you an example, if you're an employer that kind of thinks about, well, I need this certification, it's great to see that, I have that option. But it also let you consider about, are there additional certifications that we need to have on our radar and that potentially you could help enter into partnerships with local corps to infuse that as well. Okay, so like high-level overview of the roadmaps. First, what you will see is a highlighted framework. And really the intention here is to paint a concise picture of what the programming could look like. It kind of leads you through a general logic model that highlights things like member service activities, the needs they're addressing, administrative structure, stuff like that. But really what it does is kind of highlights that sweet spot for these different program models that we're highlighting. So for example, with energy efficiency, we use partnering with WAP programming. That being said, we realize that programming is not going to work for all entities. So then you have a ton of additional deep dive knowledge that will give you alternative pathways where maybe you can't partner with your WAP agencies in your state. So maybe look at utility companies or universities or whatever it might be, and we'll really lead you through all the different things that you consider to make a partnership, stand up a new program, and enhance your current program successful. So again, during our breakout sessions, we're going to take a deeper dive into some of this. Before we do that, I always want to have my say, so I do want to highlight a few specific opportunities within each roadmap that I think is worth bringing to the core group here. So with the energy efficiency, again, I do think that there's a space for greater leveraging of national service to support weatherization assistance programming. Through, I think, both of those infrastructure and IRA bills, there's increased funding, increased expectations as well. And then also through appropriations, I believe there was an increase as well. So obviously, there's a need to infuse capacity into the space. And I think that service year programming could be a partial solution to that. I think with the energy efficiency programming, there's a great way of diversifying talent in the space as well. And you see examples of that with California programming, working with employers that recruit national service participants that have gone through kind of like an energy efficiency kind of program model. I also know that there's a high need for the community outreach, education, and intake assistance within energy efficiency and weatherization programming. So outreach to the community, helping folks navigate resources, submit applications, follow up, things like that. One of the programs I ran, SBP, did this exact same thing within like the disaster response space. So obviously an opportunity for energy efficiency as well. I think a sweet spot for this programming is also homeowner education. So a lot of times, like contractors within WAP might be spending all their a significant amount of their time doing kind of those high lift retrofit activities and weatherization activities, but core members can be the ones that are coming in and educating core member or family members on other things that they can be taking in measures to reduce their energy consumption beyond like retrofits or weatherization services. We see a lot of examples of this, but one specifically is Mile High Youth Corps out of Colorado. I really think there's within like the VISTA realm of things, so community capacity building, there's a lot of roles that AmeriCorps members can be playing as far as helping with communication and coordination among partners. We see this kind of emerging in Maine with a VISTA, I think, recently being placed in the state energy office to assist with some of those same things. And then again, entry weatherization services, things like retro or swapping out inefficient light bulbs and things like that, where the contractors or community action agency employer can actually work on some of those processes that take a higher level of certification or training. So you could even see an example of this, of using that NCCC branch of National Service to almost have like a strike team of AmeriCorps members come in and help deliver these entry-level services to a wide variety of homeowners before you bring in a full, say, weatherization employee. With community capacity building, again, the whole thing about this is increasing capacity to municipalities, nonprofits, other partners to actually take some initiatives that they've been maybe wanting to do in the climate and environmental resilience space, but maybe never had the staff capacity to do it. Again, this model, a lot of what we heard was that communities, universities, school districts are looking for ways to engage volunteers, community members in the space, and core members are oftentimes the perfect fit to stand up volunteer projects, coordinate those volunteers, things like that. This is a great model for talent pipeline development for like office-based and administrative careers, which we know is also a very high need with the emerging funding in the space. I think it's great for the core members as it infuses climate resilience as part of future career paths, regardless of what they do. So I think it's a great thing for that kind of national impact that can happen because of that. And then again, it can be a foundations for statewide impact where growing climate programming in your state would maybe eventually tapping into core-based or team-based models, things like that. So rural resilience, this is great for assisting communities in participating in the growing green economy. This can look a lot of different ways, but for example, there's examples of core members being used to help research federal or state or local resources that might be available to advance a wide variety of initiatives, even like renewable energy initiatives. They can do things like convene the community for feedback sessions. They can do grant research, in some instances, help with grant applications. So again, increasing that capacity. They can also be used for promoting like reskilling and things like that. They potentially could help stand up new reskilling programmings, but also they can do community outreach in the space, marketing for programmings that are currently happening, or even like help like stand up or coordinate things like internship programs to get people exposed to other career paths. Again, great for developing the next generation of local leaders. And then again, oftentimes we'll see that as bringing in a program in the rural space connects all these different rural communities together so that they can share learnings, best practices, and initiatives that they're advancing, and it just kind of connects to a broader network. All right, I'm actually doing almost perfect on time, so that's pretty cool. So with the next 15 minutes, what we're going to do is do those breakout groups, and how that is going to look is you're going to have the option of selecting to join one of 3 breakout groups based on those 3 focus areas or roadmaps. Whichever one is most interest or applicable to you, that's what you're encouraged to join. The objectives of these breakout groups will first be to learn from kind of more about the local model and real world examples of how it's being advanced. Then you're going to take a deeper look in the contents of the roadmap and how it can be used. And then hopefully there'll be a few minutes to answer some questions and answer specific to like kind of that focus area or roadmap. As a reminder, we'll be coming together as a full group if there's anything I can answer kind of what we've covered so far. Just for some of you all that maybe are not as familiar with Zoom, what you're going to see here in a moment, I think at the bottom right-hand corner of your screen, you'll see a little like box come up that says like join breakout room or something like that. Once you click on that, you're going to see this in front of you. It's going to say the 3 specific rooms. So it'll say energy efficiency, rural resilience, or community capacity building. You'll just click join and they'll ask you one more time to push yes to join that. If anybody's having trouble, Allie will also help navigate that. I'm not going to steal their thunder because they're going to be introducing themselves in their breakout groups, but here are our discussion leaders. We got Bill Sadler from Civic Well leading community capacity discussion. They've been around advancing that community capacity model for a long time now. Bill does a great job, and I think folks will really enjoy learning about his model. We have Bryn Soas with Rural Action doing some fantastic stuff in Ohio and in the rural space, things that I can't even dream of AmeriCorps members are doing up there. So great leader of that group. Unfortunately, schedules didn't align for me to get an energy efficiency person from our cohort to lead that. I do have some direct experience with leading crews in energy efficiency as part of my national service background. So that group's going to have to unfortunately listen to me a little bit more. But with that, I guess we'll go ahead and Allie, if you can launch the breakout groups, that would be great. And we'll stay in there for 15 minutes.
Hi.
Hi there. Can I help anyone get into their room?
Well, I didn't know how to get into the room. Would we just click the picture or?
So
I'm
the
waiting
bottom.
for that list to come up. It didn't come up on my screen.
Well, is there a specific room you'd like to go into, and I can try to get you
Well,
there?
you know, I either energy efficiency or capacity building, either one.
All
good.
right. Well, let's see how many people are in each of them, and maybe that will help us decide what makes most sense. Let's do. Well, you decide. I don't want to decide for you. What do you think, Leslie?
I don't know, because what I'm doing is capacity building for an energy efficiency project. So I don't know what the right answer is. So
Why don't you go into energy efficiency, because Brent can
okay.
speak to the community capacity side of that, and that way you get a little more specifics. I'll put you
All right,
there.
thank you. Yep.
Yep.
Can I also go to energy efficiency, please?
Yep, Michelle.
Thank you.
There you go. You should be able to say like join or something if it doesn't automatically take you.
And Jenna, if you can put me into the community capacity building, please.
Yep, of course. Sorry about that. There you go.
I was thinking energy efficiency.
Perfect. I've gotcha. All right.
Hello?
Hi, Michelle.
Hi, I'm not sure what happened. It looks like I was kicked out. I wanted to try to see, I know sometimes with Zoom, you could try to see if you could check into another Zoom room or
Yeah,
breakout
which
room.
one would you like to go to? I can try to get you there.
Okay, can I try capacity building, please?
Yep, there we go.
Thank
Hopefully this will get you there. I don't know what happened, but welcome back.
Hello. Sorry. Nope, I definitely did not look at the time correctly. I'm in a different time zone.
No worries.
So
Well, we're glad to have you here. And we recorded, so we'll have all of the material.
great to hear. So people are in breakout rooms right now or coming
They're
back?
on their way back in the next like minute or so. So we'll kind of do,
Thank you, everyone.
I think we'll bring the group back together, do some summary. I don't know. I'm speaking out of turn because I don't actually know what comes next, but Brent will tell us momentarily.
Like always, I think we would have liked to have another 15 minutes, but that was pretty awesome. So let me just share my screen real quick with everyone else. So get the right thing on the screen.
Brent, folks have 30 more seconds or so, I think, to come back in. So
Okay. Well, that works well for me getting set up. No, I don't want to share. Allie, does it seem like we have the breakout rooms back, or are we still waiting for folks? All right, so thanks everyone for that. I was just mentioning at the top of us returning that I did the exact same thing again. That we had a great discussion in the energy efficiency breakout group. I wish we had another 15 minutes or so because everybody's doing some great work, and I think are kind of coming to this in different perspectives, which is great about having this diverse audience together here today. So with our remaining time today, I wanted to first, I would, here in a second, Allie's going to be dropping in or it's actually just going to pop up in your screen, just a 2-question survey that's only going to take you about 15 minutes to complete. What this is helpful to both gauge our impact and then also communicate with our funder about how these might be used or who might be leveraging them. So if you all wouldn't mind, just take 15 seconds to complete the survey that really just asks is, you think this might add some value to your sector, and if you maybe would be leveraging any of these resources. When we say sector, since we do have a broad audience, we're thinking about, like, say, national service, let's say private entities, private employers, governments, local government, universities, you know, that kind of what we're speaking to as a sector wide. All right, we're at a 81% response rate. I think that's pretty good. So we'll go ahead and close our poll. But thank you all so much for sharing that information with us. Okay, so I wanted to wrap things up with, before we get to open Q&A, I wanted to just wrap things up to help paint a picture of you know, some applicable next steps if you wanted to take them. So first of all those resources that we highlighted as part of the main presentation and in those breakout groups, all completely free, available at serviceyearalliance.org. You can do /climate or not. You can find it from the dropout menu. So please feel free to download that, share that widely, however you would like. One additional thing that I would recommend is that, especially if you're interested in learning more about service year programming, national service space in general, in each state, there's what's called a state service commission. Again, the grant making agency. They're kind of like the ambassadors, some of the entry points for learning more. And so I will share this. We'll share this presentation with you all after the call today. But this is a link where you could find your state service commission in your state, and I would recommend contacting them. Say, you know, you participate in this webinar, interested in thinking about how you can partner with climate programming, and they can tell you all about their grant competition, what programs currently exist in your state that you might want to talk to about talent development pipelines, whatever it might be. I also wanted to, I love, as part of the Aspen Ideas Climate summit earlier this year. We highlighted a specific AmeriCorps member or alumni story about a young lady who used energy efficiency programming to enter into their current career place and weatherization. Really a great thing to listen to, and again, can help paint that picture about how you could think about it as talent development. I've linked that story as part of the presentation. It's also like the specific part on the video if for some reason that doesn't come up. I also want to mention that we are partnered with the Interstate Renewable Energy Council's WAP Enhancement and Innovation Project, where we'll be working with trying to build more partnerships within the weatherization assistance programming space. So you can also join to be on that listserv with that organization, where you can learn more about resources that are coming out of that project, specific opportunities we have to maybe work with local weatherization programs, things like that. So if you are in the energy efficiency space, that's something you might want to sign up for. And then always, please feel free to shoot me an email after this. If anything, I can help you navigate to your state service commission or what programs you might want to start talking to in your space. But with that, I'll just kind of open it up for open question and answer. Feel free to raise your virtual hand and Allie can unmute you, or we can just work through the chat if questions have come up as well.
Ellie, go ahead.
Hi, yes, good afternoon. My name is Kelly Howard. I'm with AmeriCorps St. Louis, and we have a 42-member AmeriCorps team, and our focus areas are environmental stewardship and disaster response. And I guess I'm curious, as a conservation corps that already exists, would you recommend, I guess, adding energy?
Yeah, and Kelly, I think you cut out there right at the back, but I got your question. And first of all, I got to visit AmeriCorps St. Louis years ago. Big fan of the program, so love everything that you're all doing. But yeah, honestly, that's exactly what I would recommend, because you see examples of that already. So I worked for Southwest Conservation Corps, and that's where their core program is Conservation Corps programming, but they also have energy efficiency programming. Same thing with Mile High Youth Corps, because a lot of those kind of employability skills or experiences are very applicable. So Corps members learning about kind of what that environment is, ability to work with tools, safety precautions, work as part of a team, communicate, very applicable to what you're already doing in like a core setting. I don't know if AmeriCorps St. Louis is doing any of that client intake that I mentioned in the disaster response space. But if you are, I think that's very much applicable to really, I would say, all three program models, if that's something that you're already doing as far as service activities. Oh, yeah. Thanks for sharing, Bryn. And yeah, Bryn's a good example of that, about starting to lean into that space as well. All right, well, so I don't see any additional hands raised or any additional questions coming into the chat. So we can end a little bit early. I'm sure everybody will appreciate that. But if anybody wants to stay on the line and have some one-on-one time, more than happy to do that. And again, we'll be sending out those resources, the recording of this, the slide deck, and feel free to also reach out to me if I can be of assistance with navigating anything. But yeah, thank you, everybody. And yeah, this has been a pleasure. And thanks to our breakout group hosts. Fantastic.
Thanks, Brent. I'm going to contact you one-on-one. I would love to set up some time to chat with you a little bit more if you have time.
Yeah, definitely.
Seems like you might be a busy person.
Are you involved with weatherization assistance programming or energy efficiency more broadly?
I'm mostly work in residential heat pumps.
Okay.
But weatherization is really important piece of that ahead of my work, and so that's really interesting to me. I'm also involved in IREC, or I participate in IREC's workforce development working group, and yeah, I think all the time I feel like AmeriCorps or these national programs could be such a great pipeline for the workforce development that we need for the energy transition. And I'm trying to figure out how to help that along.
Yeah, shoot me an email. I'd love to talk about it, especially through the IREC project. Like, we might have funding to support me working more closely with you too. So we'll have an initial conversation and see where we can go with it.
Great. All right. Thank you so much. This was really interesting.
Susie, this is Jenna Holmes. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Hi, I'm from Michigan. Where are you from?
I'm in Oregon. I work for
Oregon.
Northwest Energy Efficiency Alliance in
Wow.
Oregon.
I'm going to put my email in the chat and would also love to follow up with you. We're looking at doing some different things with energy audits and identifying. So it's not just for corporations, but how do you do that for nonprofits? And then also have it as a learning model through community centers through a grant program that we have. So would love to hear more about what you're doing.
Sure. Yeah, that's great. And I was really excited to hear that there's a connection between service and the community action programs, because I know of them a little bit. I'm not really familiar with them, but it always seemed like that's a good connection, a good pairing of the two missions.
Yeah.
So that's
Definitely.
awesome.
And being in Oregon, are you by chance familiar with RARE AmeriCorps out of the University of Oregon?
No, I was part of Northwest Service Academy, which I don't think exists anymore, but that's what brought me out to Oregon back 25 years ago, was an AmeriCorps program. So yeah, they did environmental education work.
We'll definitely talk more, but I can connect you to other program in the rural space too that might be of interest to you, where they're doing all kinds of stuff in renewable energy, which might align with your work. So, but yeah, looking forward to connecting.
Great. All right. Thanks, everybody. I'm capturing these emails.
Great.
And I'll put mine in here too.
For you. And then Brent, we have our summer core again for the third summer with the commission. And it's always exciting, like they're just as far as brilliant and where they want to go. So a couple of the pieces I could see, again, if there's time, maybe there could be value in asking as a guest speaker, or at least sending a couple of them to process some of their ideas with you. So it's kind of fun if you're open to that kind of thing too.
Definitely open to it. And, you're one of the interviews that I mentioned. So thank you for contributing towards the project. We love all the stuff that's happening up in Michigan. So yeah, happy to do it.
Yeah, we're excited. We're crossing our fingers. We're trying to launch and nudge as much as we can to get all this going, but it's going to be within the next year, I think, that we'll start seeing some action. So excited.
Well, hopefully
thanks for all your work,
will be
everybody.
helpful.
Yeah, and Brennan, everyone's team there. God, goodness gracious, thank you for all you're doing. So thank you.
Yeah,
all right.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Go for
Bye-bye.
it, Michelle.
Yeah.
First of all, this is awesome. Thank you so much. I'm so glad that I was able to jump in, albeit a short time. Brent, Bill, Bren, this has been really helpful. Let me give you a little bit of our background. I'm working in concert in the DC metropolitan area with climate change education, specifically with BIPOC and women, and learning ways in which we could develop a green talent pipeline in the clean energy space. They're grossly underrepresented, but I know that there are funds out there, and there are pre-apprentice programs out there. I partnered now with the Urban League, and now we have a program that has a pre-apprentice program project that we've piloted. It's been for the last 7 years or so, and it allows a pipeline for specifically First Energy, and we'd like to replicate and specifically grow that opportunity. So we're looking at from high school through college, and then also we're looking at 18 to 35-year-olds, BIPOC and women. I wanted to find out if you knew of individuals and or persons who can provide that open door, maybe to companies, maybe for nonprofits that are seeking that particular kind of talent in the clean energy space.
Yeah, well, so first of all, I feel like I just want to talk to you for an hour or two, but very much in line with not only this body of work, but also like we're very much leaning into how national service can be integrated into pre-apprenticeship programming. So we also just issued a report on that that's on our website. So you might want to check it out. a lot of times what we're finding is like by marrying the two together, it helps bring some additional like that earn it and learn kind of opportunity to this space, even with allowing you to maybe shift some of your funding around to support more wraparound service or whatever. Also, the educational award that core members learn can be helpful. As far as, so if you ever want to connect to programs, there's a lot of other programs that I could connect you to that are doing a good job. With the employer space, that's exactly kind of where we see the need being, right? So there are great examples on a local, statewide level of connecting to employers. What we would like to build is a stronger, like regional or national employer network. I'm not sure we're quite there yet, but that's where we would potentially like to lean in as part of phase 2 of this project. So I don't know if I have a great answer for you. One thing that what I can tell you what we're looking into. So we think it's probably potentially a stronger strategy where there's, and you probably already know this, but there's a lot of training type of organizations that already provide kind of training and support, either pre-apprenticeship or apprenticeship, that already have those employer networks. So that would probably be an approach that we might be leaning into. So, for example, like Trade Futures is the kind of pre-apprenticeship training entity for NAB2, which is union-based, like a construction type of apprenticeship job opportunities. So like they could be someone that you might want to enter into a conversation with. And I know that they're also expanding, trying to get more talent into their pre-apprenticeship programming.
Awesome. That will be helpful. I'll definitely check into that and follow up with you, Brent. Last piece I just wanted to ask about, or really just share. Obviously, you may be aware of the SERVE Act out of the state of Maryland with Westmore. So we're in talks with the secretary there, and we're bringing some high school students to sit around the table to really kind of describe and carve out what that experience should be like. So it'll be interesting if we could potentially partner with one or two of you guys to get around that table as they're rushing to get 200 students up and ready by October.
Ellie, I feel like you're more familiar with Maryland, but
Yeah, our team has been talking with Secretary Montero quite a bit. So coincidentally, Westmore was very involved with Service Year Alliance before he ran for governor.
Sure
So we were very thrilled to see how the entire bill came together, and our team has been like offering as much support as possible to try and get this up and running. They have a very ambitious goal ahead of them to try and get many people serving in a month and a half.
All right, thank you. Appreciate it.
thanks so much. And yeah, let's stay in touch for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to see how we can help you in this Maryland work. That's wonderful, exciting.
Well, I think that's all outside guests. So Bryn, Bill, thank you again so much. How did all the breakout groups go?
Good. I apologize. I totally forgot to record.
I forgot until I was like 5 minutes in. So no.
I know. I was like 10 minutes and I'm like, oh no. And I made a note to myself and everything, but it was fine. And I think I knew some of the folks in there, like Nick was in there and one of my colleagues. So it was good.
I also screenshotted who was in each of the rooms. So I don't know if Zoom catches that. So we can probably follow up with the specific roadmaps and like offering to be helpful in an individual basis.
Yeah, it was good.
Awesome.
Cool. Thanks, guys. This was great.
Yeah.
Sorry about my doorbell sound. I'm not logged into my own Zoom, so I don't really know how to fix things when I'm like on my personal email.
If it happens in the future, under the participants, I found if you click the 3 dots next to mute all, you can turn off play sound when someone joins or leaves.
Ah.
So that's where I eventually found it, but yeah.
Thank you.
I mean, I wouldn't, yeah.
It's like almost a joke because I have this on like for myself, so I don't leave people in my waiting room.
Right.
And then I was like, oh, that's bad. Anyway, thank you. This was wonderful. I really appreciate it. I'm going to stop the records because now we have a whole.
I think I